If you can't speak English, why are you even here? A director shouted across the elegant dinner table. The entire room fell silent. The Japanese billionaire sat there, eyes cold, continuing to speak in her native language. Several executives burst into laughter, showing their contempt. The atmosphere became suffocatingly tense. Just then, the young waitress set down a tray of wine, bowing slightly. In perfect Japanese, she spoke. She just said, "Respect matters more than contracts." The laughter died instantly. Clara Jameson was 24 years old, with long brown hair, a slender frame, and gentle eyes that often looked downward, avoiding direct contact with others. She worked as a waitress in an upscale restaurant that frequently hosted international clients. Her colleagues regularly mocked her. "Clara's only good for carrying trays. Nothing special about her. She's practically invisible. Never says anything worth hearing. Just another college dropout serving rich people." That evening, the restaurant was hosting a major business dinner. CEOs, directors, investors, and most importantly, a Japanese billionaire who was considering a significant partnership. Clara was assigned to stand beside the table, pouring wine and clearing glasses. When the evening began, a brief message was passed down from management. The translator accompanying the billionaire had been in a minor accident and couldn't arrive on time. The atmosphere immediately tensed, though everyone assumed it should be fine. We'll just use English. But the Japanese billionaire spoke only in her native language. An old maintenance worker later recalled, "I saw Clara listening intently, her eyes lighting up, gripping her tray tightly, like she understood every single word." What her colleagues didn't know was that Clara's quiet demeanor hid an extraordinary linguistic ability. She had spent 3 years studying in Japan during college, becoming fluent not just in conversational Japanese, but in the subtle nuances of business and cultural communication. Her education had been cut short when family tragedy struck. Her father died unexpectedly. Her mother became seriously ill, and medical bills had bankrupted the family. Clara had returned home to support her mother, taking whatever work she could find to pay for ongoing care. The upscale restaurant job paid better than most service positions, but it required her to become invisible, a background figure who served wealthy clients without drawing attention to herself. For months, she had listened to international business conversations, understanding far more than anyone realized, but remaining silent because that was what her job required. She had heard deals discussed in multiple languages, witnessed cultural misunderstandings that could have been easily resolved, and watched opportunities slip away because of communication barriers. But speaking up would have meant revealing capabilities that didn't match her current role, potentially creating complications she couldn't afford. Her mother's medical treatments depended on Clara maintaining steady employment, even if it meant hiding her education and abilities. So she perfected the art of invisibility, moving through rooms full of powerful people while remaining unnoticed and underestimated. Tonight, however, that careful balance was about to be shattered. The miscommunication brewing at the dinner table threatened to destroy a deal worth millions, and Clara found herself facing a choice between maintaining her anonymity and preventing a cultural disaster that she alone could see coming. The decision she made would change not just the evening, but her entire future. The Japanese billionaire began speaking, her voice low and measured, hands placed deliberately on the table for emphasis. The executives looked at each other blankly. No one understood a word. One manager forced an uncomfortable smile. "Maybe she should have brought a translator." A frustrated director snapped, "If you can't speak English, why are you even here?" Several others laughed nervously, creating an atmosphere of awkward disrespect. Clara stood nearby, understanding every word perfectly. The billionaire was speaking about her philosophy of respect over profit, and wanted to know which people in the room truly shared these values. Clara hesitated. She knew she was just a waitress, not supposed to interfere. But if she remained silent, the entire evening would collapse. The Japanese billionaire's expression grew colder as the laughter continued. She was clearly offended by the dismissive attitude, and Clara could see her preparing to leave. Finally, Clara took a deep breath, set down her wine tray, and bowed slightly to the billionaire. "Excuse me, ma'am. May I help convey your message?" The billionaire looked at her, silent for several seconds, then nodded subtly. Clara spoke in fluent, clear Japanese, her pronunciation perfect. She just said, "Respect matters more than contracts." And she wants to know which of you truly believe that. The entire dinner table fell silent. No more laughter, a guest later recalled. Her voice rang out, strong and confident, without trembling. She was no longer just a waitress. She had become a bridge between two worlds. The transformation in the room was immediate and dramatic. The executives who had been laughing moments before now stared at Clara in shock, realizing that their dismissive comments had been understood and translated. The Japanese billionaire's expression softened slightly as she looked at Clara with new interest. She spoke again in Japanese, asking Clara directly, "Where did you learn to speak like this?" Clara responded fluently, explaining that she had studied in Japan for 3 years, but had to return home due to family circumstances and financial difficulties. The dinner guests sat in stunned silence as they watched this conversation unfold entirely in Japanese, between the waitress they had ignored and the billionaire they were trying to impress. One executive whispered to another, "She understood everything we said. Every insult, every dismissive comment." The billionaire continued speaking, and Clara translated for the table. She appreciates that someone here was actually listening to her words rather than just waiting for their turn to talk. The executives who had been so confident and dismissive minutes earlier now looked embarrassed and uncertain. They began to realize that their behavior had been observed and judged by someone who could communicate their attitudes directly to the very person they were trying to do business with. Clara continued facilitating the conversation, translating both directions with precision and cultural sensitivity. She didn't just convert words. She explained cultural contexts and nuances that helped both sides understand each other's perspectives. The billionaire asked Clara about her background, her studies in Japan, and her current situation. As Clara answered honestly about her family responsibilities and her current work, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. The executives began to see her not as invisible service staff, but as someone with valuable skills and knowledge they had completely overlooked. More importantly, the Japanese billionaire was clearly impressed by Clara's linguistic abilities and cultural understanding. What had started as a cultural disaster was becoming an opportunity for genuine communication, facilitated by someone everyone had dismissed as unimportant. The evening was far from over, and Clara's intervention had changed everything. The Japanese billionaire smiled for the first time that evening, then asked Clara in Japanese, "Where did you study?" Clara responded fluently, explaining her 3 years studying in Japan, how her father's death and mother's illness had forced her to leave university, and how family bankruptcy had led her to work as a waitress. The dinner table sat in stunned silence. Those who had mocked her earlier couldn't meet her eyes. The billionaire raised her glass and spoke in Japanese, waiting for Clara to translate. "Tonight, only one person truly listened to me." Clara's hands trembled slightly as she translated, and the entire room remained completely silent. The billionaire made a decision right there at the table. She would postpone all contract negotiations and invite only those who showed genuine respect to continue discussions in a private meeting. She asked Clara to participate as a temporary interpreter for the next session, until the official translator could return. A guest later confessed, "I felt so small in that moment." A waitress had silenced an entire table of executives, just with a few sentences in Japanese. The revelation transformed not just the evening, but everyone's understanding of the people around them. Clara's colleagues, who had dismissed her as just another college dropout, learned that she had attended one of Japan's most prestigious universities on a full scholarship. Her language skills weren't just conversational. She understood business terminology, cultural protocols, and the subtle nuances that made the difference between successful and failed international negotiations. The executives discovered that their dismissive attitude toward both the billionaire and Clara had been observed and evaluated by someone who could communicate their behavior directly to the person they were trying to impress. More importantly, they realized how many valuable insights and opportunities they might have missed by ignoring the people they considered beneath their notice. The billionaire continued the conversation exclusively through Clara, making it clear that she trusted the waitress more than the executives who had shown such disrespect. She asked Clara about her experience in Japan, her understanding of Japanese business culture, and her observations about American business practices. Clara's responses demonstrated not just language fluency, but deep cultural knowledge that impressed everyone at the table. She explained concepts like omotenashi, Japanese hospitality, and biue, harmony, in ways that helped the American executives understand why their behavior had been so offensive. In Japanese business culture, Clara explained, how you treat all people, regardless of their position, reflects your character and trustworthiness. The billionaire nodded approvingly and added in Japanese, "Someone who disrespects a waitress will eventually disrespect their business partners." As Clara translated this, the impact on the executives was visible. They began to understand that they had failed a test they didn't even know they were taking. The restaurant manager, who had been watching from a distance, approached the table. "Ma'am, I had no idea about your background. We've been completely underutilizing your skills." Clara remained modest. "I was just doing what was needed in the moment." But the billionaire wasn't finished. She spoke directly to Clara in Japanese. "I'm looking for someone to help establish my company's American operations, someone who understands both cultures and can facilitate genuine communication." When Clara translated this for the table, the executives realized they were witnessing a potential job offer worth more than most of their annual salaries. The evening had revealed something profound. Talent and value could be hidden in the most unexpected places, overlooked by people who made assumptions based on job titles and appearances. Clara's intervention hadn't just saved a business deal. It had exposed the cultural blindness and arrogance that could have cost everyone at the table far more than they realized. The billionaire's final comment, delivered in Japanese and translated by Clara, summarized the lesson. The most important business skill is to recognize value wherever it appears. As the formal dinner concluded, it was clear that Clara's life was about to change dramatically. But perhaps more importantly, everyone present had learned something about the danger of overlooking people based on superficial judgments. The waitress they had ignored had become the most important person in the room, simply by possessing skills they had never bothered to discover. After the dinner ended, Clara returned to her normal duties, clearing tables and washing glasses. No one dared make dismissive comments anymore. The looks directed toward her were completely different now. The Japanese billionaire gave Clara a personal business card with a message written in Japanese. "Those who truly listen are those worth trusting. Clara didn't immediately change careers, but from that day forward, she was no longer the invisible girl carrying trays. In the employee break room, the chair next to her always remained empty, silence replacing contempt with respect. Within a week, 3 different companies had contacted the restaurant, asking if Clara might be available for translation and cultural consulting work. The restaurant manager offered her a promotion to customer relations, specifically for international clients, with a salary increase that would cover her mother's medical expenses more comfortably. Clara found herself facing choices she had never imagined possible just days earlier. The Japanese billionaire's offer remained open, a position helping establish American operations for her company, with responsibilities that would utilize Clara's linguistic skills and cultural knowledge. But more importantly, the incident had changed how everyone in the restaurant viewed not just Clara, but all their employees. The manager instituted new policies requiring staff interviews to discover hidden skills and backgrounds that might benefit the business. "We've been sitting on talent we didn't know we had," he admitted to his assistant managers. "How many other valuable capabilities have we overlooked?" Clara's story spread through the restaurant industry, becoming an example of how businesses could miss opportunities by failing to recognize the abilities of their existing staff. A week later, Clara accepted the position with the Japanese company, but she negotiated to start part-time while training a replacement at the restaurant. She wanted to ensure that her departure didn't create hardship for her former colleagues, many of whom had supported her even when they didn't understand her background. Her last shift as a waitress was marked not by celebration, but by quiet acknowledgement from everyone who had learned to see beyond job titles and appearances. The Japanese billionaire attended Clara's farewell dinner at the restaurant, speaking entirely in Japanese, while Clara translated for the assembled staff. Her message was simple. True success comes from recognizing and developing the talents that others overlook. Clara's transformation from invisible waitress to valued cultural liaison had taken just one evening, but the lessons for everyone involved would last much longer. People once mocked an invisible waitress, thinking she had no value beyond carrying trays. But in a single moment, she saved an entire business dinner from collapse, using something everyone else lacked: the ability to truly listen and communicate with sincerity. Clara didn't need titles or positions, just one moment of speaking up, and she made every mocking laugh disappear. The lesson is clear. Don't underestimate quiet people around you. They might be the key to unlocking new paths when you're most stuck. Hidden talents exist everywhere, overlooked by people who judge based on job titles rather than actual capabilities. The most valuable employees might be the ones you've never bothered to really notice. Sometimes the solution to your biggest problem is sitting right in front of you, waiting for someone to recognize its worth. If you believe that quiet people deserve to be remembered, leave a dot in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to SN Quiet Stories to hear more tales like this.